Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of Kopi Chats with me, Wilin, about your Malaysian news. Today I'm going to talk about the most boring topic that I've ever talked about. But because it's the biggest thing in Malaysia, just at this moment, it seems like a nice opportunity to introduce something that I want to talk about, a particular concept. But before I jump into that, I want to first take us through a little bit about, the new topic, which is 2021's budget. So the government's budget has been tabled in Parliament, and people are beginning to react to it. They've already done so for a few days. Let me take you through the reactions a bit quickly. I'm going to show you, reactions from a few characters and personalities online, and mostly, it's from each political party in Malaysia, the major political parties. So first one here is Khalid Samad, from the party Amanah. Amanah, for those who don't know, is like the splinter party of the Islamic Party. They're more business friendly, and Khalid actually doesn't have a lot to say about it. He's a bit of a troll. So you see over here, on the 8th of November, about the budget, he says, lawak betul orang ni, prihatin terhadap kepentingan politik mereka je. Good, inclusive, hahaha. So he has nothing better to say than just say, you're not inclusive, ha 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 ha, you think you are so inclusive. That's the best he can say. Bertanggung jauh sekali. You're the furthest thing from responsible. To the Minister of Trade and Industry, Muhammad Asmin Ali. So it doesn't really have, and I've scrolled through a bit to know that there's no particular topic that he really disagrees with. Okay, moving on. Taking us to Facebook, here is Kamaruzaman. He's the communications director, communication or info chief for the Islamic Party. And you can see that he looks perfectly respectable, in his traditional dress. And lo and behold, the Islamic Party is clearly the most, staff of the most gentlemanly people in Malaysian politics. Because after the budget was tabled and announced, Kamaru Zaman just shared some congratulatory messages saying, congratulations for tabling the budget 2021. Um, you know, expressing hopes for it to go well and everything like that. Blessings from God. So also, no particular criticism coming from the Islamic Party's, info chief. Moving on. How about AMNO, the granddaddy of all political parties in Malaysia? So they're not in power anymore, and this is their, or also their info chief. Sorry, I don't get the exact titles right, but I know the right people. So Sharil Hamdan, uh, he he's quite a character. He tweets almost exclusively in English, and he doesn't have a lot to criticize about it either. So Belanjawan 2021, there's no such thing as taxpayers' money. There's only public money. I mean, it's a slogan, but it's kind of meaningless, right? Let's be honest. La 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 la. Yeah, here we go. Budget 2021. Here's something about a shared by Yobin, member of parliament for Bakri. He retweets that in support, and he wants to push for a federal jobs guarantee so that Malaysians will have jobs when they as long as they're willing to work. So once again, and this is important. The reason why I keep emphasizing that there are no specific problems with the budget consistently. Across three political parties now, it shows you that their take is, oh, the budget generally makes sense. They don't really have any major complaints with it. Okay, the next two people are the big hitters, really big hitters in Malaysian politics. First up is Lim Guan Eng. He's the head of the DAP, which is a huge party, very powerful in Malaysia right now, and he has issued statements in various different languages, in Malay, in English, in Chinese, in Tamil, I believe. So see here, there is no unity budget 2021 if the Perikatan Nasional federal government rejects Pakatan Harapan's 6 key fiscal and financial measures that save jobs, businesses, and economic livelihood of Malaysians. So According to Lim Guan Eng, they have 6 things that they really, really want. And I've looked through them. They're very, very, very modest. Better jobs, better funding for the health ministry for fighting the pandemic, and so on. So Lim Guan Eng, consummate politician, he presents it as these 6 key super important things that must be done, and we will not compromise on them. But if you really get down to them, and I don't know if he has it stated here anywhere. Let me just take a quick look. Boop, 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 boop. Sorry, I'm afraid. I don't think it's here. 6 things, 6 things. Sorry, it's just not here. Actually, if you don't mind me saying, I think that also speaks to the importance of the 6 measures. That is, they're not that important. Because if they were, they would be here. Or maybe they are, but they're not highlighted properly. So once again, we see repeatedly that okay, Lim Guan Eng for DAP wants some particular things. Okay, let me take a look at this. Unrealistic projections, financial half measures, and political handouts. 8.6% increase in the budget is not shared by all segments, which it can be expected because um some ministries or some agencies require more funding than others. Not everything is about welfare, so it wouldn't be shared equally by all segments of society. It just wouldn't. But it is a very convenient political slogan to say that, hey, you have increased the budget and yet it's not shared by everyone. How terrible. So I think realistically for adults, we're all adults and we know that that's okay. So long as if we look at it, do we get enough for fighting pandemic, for reviving the economy? I think these are the things that people care about. All right, very sensible. Okay, last one is the big fish, the leader of the opposition in parliament, Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim. Okay, and he has a lot to say about the budget. He complains about the budget he goes on very long, and he has been going for a long time. Let's see, how far back does this go? Quite far. He's been tweeting a lot and showing himself a lot. Hey, look at me. I'm in the news. I'm in the media. Unfortunately, yeah, he is the head of the opposition, so presumably he has to be in the picture. Fair enough. And look at this. He even talks about his constituency, Port Dickson, constituency P132, right? So, what does he say exactly about the budget? Given that he has so many posts about it, surely you would expect that there are some extremely important things that he has to say about the budget, right? Actually, I think it's not. Wrong. That's totally not the case. Look, whether it's a V curve, U curve, K curve, or Z curve, in Malaysian cases of COVID, we have to be realistic. Wow. That has nothing to do with the budget. Nothing to do with anything. It's just a soundbite. It's so absurd. But he has to highlight it. I mean, it sounds like a real powerful thing. And here we are quoting Melissa Go from Channel News Asia. As the budget continues, Anwar Ibrahim, a question the need to limit MP's attendance to 80. Oh, yes. Okay. Let me see. Can I actually find something that he says about the budget? The opposition leader says that he will only support the budget if it is clearly for COVID-19 and after the government clarifies some muddy issues. This is here. Opposition to reject budget in current form. Anwar raps Tengku Zafrul, the finance minister, for being pro-bank. And I don't actually like that. I think that's absurd. It's knocking Tengku Zafrul on his background, which is totally unrelated to the budget, totally unrelated to the issue at hand. You can't. There's no complaint there. It's just a personal attack, which is absolutely terrible. Uh, Even though we're keen to pass budget, we won't compromise on emoluments for civil servants and frontliners allowance. So notice though, this is a very sensible thing. We're talking about emoluments for, I don't even know what emoluments means. I presume it's very similar to allowance. And of course, nobody wants to compromise on that. Everybody wants frontliners, civil servants to have their proper compensation for what has been a very tough year. Uh, does this does this mean that there's a problem with it? Unclear, because Anwar didn't exactly make it clear whether he has a problem with it. Okay, here is something. Where's the 3 billion COVID-19 vaccine allocation in budget 2021? Fair question. Fair question. And perhaps the first very reasonable and targeted, useful question that we've encountered while scrolling through this timeline, this Twitter timeline. Pertumbuhan ekonomi negara perlu realistic. Okay, allocation for national economic growth must be realistic. Of course, of course. So I've scrolled enough. I'm going to stop now. There's actually still a lot to go. But even so, I can stop and I can tell you there is nothing really that is super specific coming from any of the major political parties in Malaysia. They have no real complaints about the budget, so they resort to complaints about, okay, make sure that our frontline workers are taken care of, make sure that there actually was a complaint about, oh yeah, where is the vaccine budget coming from? There is a little bit of dispute about money for the Ministry of Communication, saying, is this a propaganda budget? Is the government going to, restart this a big propaganda project? Reasonable question. Totally not important, because in a budget that is like billions and billions of ringgit, 85 million for Ministry of Communications, they can totally clarify what they're going to use it for, but it's not a big deal. So with this, I can take you to the lesson that we have learned today. That is the lack of a clear objection to the budget, the lack of, like a real sticking point, a real problem, a real dispute about this budget points squarely to saying that this is a pretty decent budget. This is perfectly reasonable. I've looked at a bit of the highlights. The finance minister already says that, hey, I have increased the budget for the health ministry. See, Tengku Zafrul thanks Hishamuddin, the foreign minister, for his support regarding the finance ministry's allocation for the health ministry, the increased allocation for the health ministry. So looks like it's pretty okay. The stock market also rallies on what the investors saw as a positive budget, it says here. And the finance minister has been hitting the media circuit to talk about his budget. So all in all, looks entirely fine to me. No specific complaints. Increased budget for the health ministry. All around looks pretty okay. And investors likewise think that it's okay. Now, this doesn't mean that investors are the same as, the average person like you and me. Of course not. Of course not. It goes without saying. It's just one thing to consider in the larger scheme of things. And the most important would be that we have not heard any specific complaints about the budget. And you can be very sure that if we can rely on politicians for one thing, it is that they will take every opportunity they can to criticize their opponents. That is entirely reliable. That's the most reliable thing, perhaps, about politics. So, with that is the key takeaway. The lack of a complaint, a real, legitimate, serious complaint, is kind of like observing the white space around something. It is like talking about, some of you may heard of the story about Sherlock Holmes and the case of the dog that did not bark. So Sherlock Holmes had observed that in one of his cases, the murderer was known to the victim because the victim's dog did not bark at night, meaning the dog knew the murderer and did not bark. So here, in a similar vein, the lack of a real serious complaint about the budget, or one or several serious complaints, just shows us that it's perfectly reasonable budget. And for that reason, I can predict that the budget will be passed without much incident. That's my prediction. I will revisit this topic, and I know it's a little bit vague. I know that it sounds like I'm not really it's not like a very clear cut prediction, but I think that's because I don't know how we can make it more clear cut. I would like to. I mean, for sure, certainly every government will pass its own budget, and there's no exception here. Certainly, it has to be passed. But there will certainly be some horse trading. Like some people will ask for, hey, I want to see more for teachers, so a little bit more will be given to teachers. I want to see more for farmers, so a little bit more will go to farmers. But I think it will be generally smooth sailing. That's my prediction. So hold me to that, and we'll discuss it, next time round when we cover the budget again. And till next time, thank you very much for joining me. Have a good evening. Bye bye.